Okay, so who am I? I'm a principal security engineer. I work for a cloud company, like a lot of people do. If you recognize my name, it's probably because I actually do a lot of community work. I'm actually one of the BSides Seattle organizers. So I love BSides. It's an amazing, amazing organization. I got 2 links up here if you want to learn more about me. The first one is actually my TLDR-SEC staff plus security engineering interview. That's a mouthful. If there's anyone else in the audience that's like a staff plus engineer and wants to be interviewed, feel free to come up and talk to me. It's a pretty cool experience. Okay, so this is my question. We're all security people, we're all interested in security, but do you ever have that like nagging feeling that you guys like aren't actually talking about the same thing when you're talking about the same thing? Yeah, we've all had that. All right. So welcome to BSides. There's audience participation. If you really don't like it, just keep your mouth shut. It's totally fine. Okay, and we're not gonna like run around with a mic just because like this is a lightning talk and that would take a lot of time. But does somebody want to throw out a definition of a vulnerability? Like just shout it out. Oh come on, there's got to be somebody. Something that can be exploited? Is that what you said? I got one in the back too. All right. I don't know how to top that. All right, so cool. We got a definition of vulnerability. Can someone give me a definition of an attack? Assault? Is that what you said? Well, I mean that's true, but let's do it in a security sense. Exploiting a vulnerability. A method, okay. Do you see how like we just said that an attack is exploiting a vulnerability? So then if we weren't on the same page with a vulnerability, we just said we were going to attack, yeah. All right, but here's the example that will probably piss people off a little. What's cross-site scripting? Okay, so it's an injection. What was that? Violation of trust.
It's a coding error.
It is a coding error. So, but here's my question for you. Is it a vulnerability or is it an attack? It's a feature. Okay. I love this audience. This is great. But like honestly, depending on your viewpoint, you're going to say it's an attack. Because you're a red teamer, you're like, how do I get into this thing? Oh, I found some cross-site scripting. Yes, I get the data. Or you're a blue teamer being like, oh, for love of Pete, why didn't they sanitize their inputs and encode their outputs, right? Like, so that's the problem. And so we tried to kind of like, how are we going to solve this problem, right? And for us at the time, we're actually facing a slightly different problem. We had a boatload of data. Anybody else have a boatload of data? Just ridiculous amounts? And can you pull it all together? So here's the problem. Let's say you have pen test reports, you have threat modeling results, you have detections. What else is there? There's red teaming, there's maybe a risk analysis, you've had an incident, you've done a post-incident report, you've got all this data. It's awesome. It tells you everything that's wrong, right? How do you pull it all together? And the reason I ask that is that so often we each have our different way of defining those things. And now, if you're me and you're trying to understand the landscape, you're going, I can't join. Like I literally sat there being like, there's nothing to join on. Like, how am I going to do any of this analysis? And so this is what I talk about. It's like to me, it's a building block, right? So it's like this little tiny thing right here, and it's so important that we all ignore because it's just easier to do our jobs. All right, so what's our approach to solving this? And the ground tradition of like, we all have busy day jobs, and we all don't really want to do data analysis. We formed a V team. So that's just a volunteer team. It was like no one's job. We just all volunteered and said, we're going to do this. We're going to solve this problem. But I just said we all have day jobs, right? And so then I had to go make the case that we had to prioritize this effort, and here was going to be the results, and here's the impact, and you make the great program management case. So we started to build our vulnerability taxonomy. That's what we started with. So what was our goal? Well, selfishly, for the engineers, it was to accelerate our data efforts, right? Like, that's why we wanted it. And then we realized it might be helpful to have a shared language when talking with our service teams about their vulnerabilities. Like, it's kind of an afterthought. Like seriously, we're all like, ooh, we can analyze data, this is gonna be amazing. And then we're like, oh wait, we can speak better with the people we help. Oh, cool. But as usual, you have a lot of data, and now I'm gonna analyze it, and you're like, oh no, now I have more data. So, pick your poison. So I wanted to share sort of like the large categories we put together. Bit of context, we support teams that build identity and network access software. So we needed things that probably may not apply to every team. We also got to avoid things that didn't apply to our team, right? There are definitely categories that you would see that are missing. They just don't apply to us. We don't have to worry about them, right? But these are the ones we sat down and did. And I want to kind of call your attention to the other. That will be the category you both love and hate. It's so much fun. All right, so let's I had to find one of the categories that didn't have a bajillion items, so I could actually give you guys an example. These are both basically, denial of service, let's be real. And so what we tried to do is talk about it in terms that people might search for it, right? Not just us as security pros, but denial of service is something, other people know. So we try to include language that could be accessible. I'm trying to see if there's, these aren't maybe the best examples, but we talked about when possible, we try to include fixes. These are obviously a little less fixy related, but that was kind of the goal, is also what's a fix, right? But you see denial of service, so then what could happen is the service team's I don't really know which denial of service I've hit. That's okay, they can come and talk to you. At least we're starting on the same page, so that's exciting, right? Okay, so how do you actually, so you've done all the work, right? And by the way, to do all the work, there were originally 4 or 5 of us who sat down and said, okay, how do we start? How do we build this? And at our company, we had actually a large vulnerability taxonomy. It had 800 individual items. And we thought to ourselves, there is no way anyone's going through 800 items to find what their problem is. That's just not going to happen. And remember I said earlier, there's just stuff that doesn't apply to us. So we pared that way down, and then we said, what's missing? And then we went out and looked on the web at other people's examples, because why reinvent the wheel if you don't have to? So there were 4 of us. We did that kind of work together. And then to actually write the definitions, because if you look at this, we've got a subcategory. But we wanted a description that was tangible, right? That was about a team of 10. But that we ended up with about 200, and with a team of 10, that's only 20 definitions a person, right? You can bang through that, especially I don't know if anybody else's days like mine, where you have meetings. Ooh, I get 25 minutes. Okay, what am I gonna do with 20? I don't know what anyone else does with 25 minutes. There's not much you can do, but I can write a definition, right? It's this is the perfect work for somebody as busy as me. All right, so what was our goals when we put it into practice? We wanted to make it easy for teams to adopt. So for us, that meant integrating into all our tooling. So that, I have to say, if you write something flat, congratulations, you wrote a flat document, don't expect anyone to use it. So ours is integrated into all our tooling. There was a lot of work to make that possible. But literally, if a team's filing a bug, there's just pull-down menus, right? Super easy. That way, then we can pipe that back into all our data analysis. But culture change is hard. I will say, if you decide to go down this path, you really need an evangelist. You need somebody who's constantly being like, "Hey, you didn't fill out this category or this subcategory. Can you? And then, do you need help?" Because if you don't do that, it's not going to happen. I gotta be honest. And like, it takes a while to train other people to do what you want, right? Like, they don't want to do what you. I mean, maybe they do. And that's not been my experience. And then, remember how we talked about the mysterious other? I didn't put any parameters around it when I introduced it. Turns out that was a mistake that I learned the hard way. I started getting things back like external researcher. And I was like, how is an external researcher a vulnerable? Like, I just sat there being like, this came in through bug bounty. That's not the vulnerability. Like, I'm sorry, an external researcher is not the vulnerability. Let's be very clear about that. And then sometimes people just put the most, like, detailed thing I'd ever seen, and I was just like, but there's a category that says almost this verbatim. Why are you doing this? So we ended up having to do some cleanup. We ended up having to write some guidance, like, please don't put external researcher. It's not really a vuln. It's important, though, right? Because there's stuff we're not going to think of, and the threat landscape changes, the attackers get smarter, and we're going to have to, like, edit. The problem with that is if you run metrics, it gets a little dicey as you change things. But just calling it out there, just, warning you. So how do you build your own? Because I think that's the important part, right? Like, that's what we're all here. We're like, how do we do this? Define the problem, and then define the problem for your space, right? Remember how I said at the beginning, we had a great list. It was 800 items. That was not, I still think that's a lot. Like, every time I reflect back on that, I'm like, wow, that's a lot of categories. You probably don't actually have that many, right? Like, well, maybe you do, and then good luck. But define your space and your problem and figure out what your tooling is, what kind of changes you're gonna have to make, what all tools do people use, and ask them. Because here's the funny thing I learned along the way. There are a whole bunch of things that were not on my radar, right, that people are using, and I needed to get those changes to those tools as well. And 100% borrow from other people. Like, do not go and reinvent the wheel. Like, just don't. Like, there's smart people. We're all smart people, let's be clear. But, I mean, BugCrowd and HackerOne have their definitions. Yes, they're obviously about bug bounty. There'll be things that won't be on that you'll need, but it's a really good starting point. If you prefer to come in from the attacker perspective, MITRE is to me, it's like one of the best ones out there. We're actually in the middle of developing an attack taxonomy as well, because we've learned that may help people understand the vulnerability better. So I do think having both is actually really critical to success. Do not, for the love of God, let the perfect be the enemy of the good. What we discovered as we started editing is that people were doing that. And I was like, just let it go. Like, you would get on a call to discuss because we would review all of them. You want to make sure they make sense. If the call's gone up for 30 minutes and you're still on one item, you're doing it wrong. I mean, you're not. You're having a really interesting debate amongst yourselves, and you're learning stuff. But again, it's got to just be kind of simple. Don't over-index on making the thing perfect, and be okay with iterating. Because that's exactly what we did. We just kept iterating and iterating. We still iterate. One of the interesting things is as we started to work on the attack taxonomy, we were able to then compare it to the vulnerability taxonomy and say, okay, what are we missing here? And that was actually a really interesting perspective that I recommend. Accountability really matters. So that's that evangelist person constantly poking at people, being like, hey, you didn't fill this out. Hey, this category really matters. Hey, can you do the thing? It sounds really annoying, but it's actually kind of fun, right? Because you get just basically like, I don't know about anybody else, it's like, oh, I got brownie points because I said that you didn't do a thing. Like, I did a thing because you didn't do a thing. Cool. And keep iterating. Like, and be open to that, and be open to like people giving you feedback and telling you what's wrong with it. Don't take it personally. We definitely made a lot of changes based on behavior we observed. If you use internal code names for things, for example, I think that's actually very common. Like, we always see this type of incident. We call it this code name. So externally, people don't know what it is. Put those into your definitions. I learned that one the hard way. People kept telling me it was this type of incident, and I was like, what? But there's a boom. Okay. So if you see like repetitive behavior, especially by like your service teams, go fix it. This has really helped us actually a lot. Like, we actually can now run metrics and say, okay, here's the most common category of problems. Here's the most common subcategory of problems. Like, we actually know what we need to go solve for. And what I think is nice is it's not just incident data, right? It's also your threat model, your risk analysis. It's like you combine everything to actually give you that full landscape. I think when you don't do that, you actually miss things. All told, I would say the journey took us a month and a half. As I said, originally 4 engineers. This was not our full-time job. We had a lot of other things to do. You can go really fast, you can go really slow. There's no like set time, I wouldn't think. And that's all I got for you. And this is one of my favorite ones out there. I mean, come on, it's funny, right? All right, does anybody have any questions? I know that was sort of like a whirlwind tour of our experience. Okay.
Get the walking microphone here.
So how many engineers are you supporting? Or how many people are you dealing with having to run down their vulnerabilities or attacks that they're logging?
So make sure I understand. You're asking how many people I support that are going, wow, I've never counted. We actually let service teams put it in. So it's in addition to security team, which is about 60 of us, we support 260 some odd services. I don't know the math, 1,000 some odd engineers and product managers. Like, we let anybody actually put the data in. We spot check it. I realize that means it's not perfect, and I'm okay with that.
So when I was watching your presentation, the first thing that jumped into my head, and you kind of, I think, hit towards the end for, don't recreate the wheel, was it sounded like you were describing the CWE. And I was curious if you looked at that and used it and how much that played into it and how much you ended up differing from that, if that was part of your research and where you started.
It's interesting. We didn't use CWE. It's another one that I've thought about after the fact that would be useful. But we basically, because we had an internal one we could start from, that's what we started from. And then we pulled in some stuff from, I honestly don't remember if it was Bugcrowd or HackerOne. Like, it was one of the 2 big bug bounties. We went and pulled in some other stuff. But CWE, that's a good point. I can have that up on the slide. That's another great place to start. That's my point. There's all these resources, just use them.
Hey, long time no see. What I'm curious about is what types of data visualization or analysis, or do these reports go up to the leadership, or how is this kind of weaponized within the organization to make it more effective?
Okay, so the best part is I I should have said at the beginning, like how many people actually know me, how many people work with me. So that's a funny question to me for that reason. We actually don't have a ton of visualizations around this. It's mostly for the security team, I'll be honest. Like we haven't been great about sharing it. That's sort of selfish of us, because what we care about is like, you know, it pains me to use this expression, as you shift left, you really want to focus on prevention, right? And you want to focus on protection, but you're not going to build those right if you don't understand how people are attacking you. So for us, it's more like our own little secret store of data. We just make all the service teams tell us things. But to your point, it's probably better if we share it. But we have not actually like shared it with the organization. I'll be very clear about that. You've planted an interesting seed. Maybe I'll consider it. We have other dashboards that we think are more apropos. This one, as I said, it's for us. It's selfishly for us. Oh, we got a question up here.
So Lea, my question is, I've always been a big proponent of like adoption is king, kind of goes in line with that. Some of the struggles that I've had with the IT career has been when the standards are set, they're not enforced, so they become kind of useless, and that other category becomes like 99%. It's like other, but also the description either has very little or it's a word salad. So as someone who's not in leadership, what paths have you seen that are effective in helping the evangelist or the champions push forward that?
Yeah, so as I said, like you definitely want people who, like I'll be honest, I took on that evangelist role pretty hard, like pretty hardcore. I was like, I'm gonna make everybody fill this out. Gosh darn it. I worked so hard on it and it's so important. But I can't be in every meeting, right? So I can't always make sure it's happened. So then it's about the entire security team like coming together and making sure this happens. So if we get things where it's missing, we need to send it back. We really just need to encourage people. It's okay to be wrong, or if you don't know, come talk to us. Like we're actually friendly. For other, other was difficult. As I said, we did not set any parameters around it originally. And as I said, my favorite one was and if it was just one person telling me an external researcher was a vulnerability, I would have just chuckled. But when it happened like 10 times, I was like, oh no, I need to fix this. I would definitely push back on other. So other is the one that we do tend to when someone puts it in, we tend to push back pretty hard on it. Because to your point, they either don't tell you enough information, you get word salad, or it becomes everything. And we're really please make sure if you're gonna choose other, that really these 200 some other ones don't apply to you. And if you don't think they don't apply to you, come talk to us before you put it in. So it's not the best mechanism because it does require people to engage, but you actually get really fruitful conversations out of those engagements. So that's how we've tried to tackle it. As I said, it is required fields, so that makes it a bit easier. But it's not so much required for submission, I discovered. So we say you have to do it, but I haven't really pushed it so far that you actually really have to do it to hit submit. But when we find them missing, we go back. It's not perfect. I'm just going to be really clear about that.
One last one, then we'll have.
Do you have this list somewhere out in the ether that can be shared?
No, but I can give you back. I can go back to the. So if we go back. Those are the major categories we used. It's not a public list because it's for internal for our company use, but grab a screenshot of this, and then if you have questions, seriously, just hit me up. Happy to talk through stuff. I'll probably have to vet you a little, make sure I know you're not nefarious, but I'm actually really willing to have these open conversations as people go down this path. Seriously, my LinkedIn is just my first name, last name. Just hit me up, say, I heard your talk, I want to talk to you about this, I will get on a phone call with you, why not, right? Let's help each other. All right, awesome. Well, thanks, everybody. This was a lot of fun.